I believe this set of videos is of a vacation taken by my great-aunt Lil and Uncle Bob McGowan. The scenes most closely match the trip documented in the Renwick Times that started on June 26, 1938, and they returned on July 14th. The general destination documented in the newspaper was the Black Hills. While that is mostly in South Dakota, the video I have starts with an entering Wyoming sign, and most of the film is of Devil's Tower National Monument, which is in the Wyoming portion of the Black Hills. If anyone watching this can help correct errors or add information, please comment. This welcome sign appears to be at the point in the Black Hills where old U.S. Highway 14 crossed from South Dakota to Wyoming. Interstate 90 crosses at this same point today. The scenes right after are likely as you go further west on 14. The route from Renwick was likely due north, spending the first night in Amboy, Minnesota with John Tanck's sister, Emma Holk. Then they would have caught US 14, which was the original route between Chicago and Yellowstone National Park, and it went through the Black Hills. Uncle Bob and Aunt Lil owned the McGowan Grocery in Renwick, Iowa, which was just a small-town mom-and-pop shop on Main Street. They took a 2 or 3 week vacation each year, and for most of the years from 1933 through 1940 brought along Lil's parents, John and Meta Tanck, and Bob's father, James McGowan Sr. All lived in the Renwick area. Here is the first time you can see Devil's Tower in the distance. Now you can see the road sign pointing to the right saying Devil's Tower is 7 miles away. This must be the intersection of U.S. Highway 14 and State Highway 24, and it is still the main way to Devil's Tower today. I'd wondered how a small business owner could afford to be away so long, and thanks to the Renwick Times I discovered that they had Lil's sister Meta and her husband Henry Foster come and run the store for them. Henry was superintendent of schools at Norris Springs, Iowa, so he had the time. Plus, Meta was very close with another sister, Norma, who lived next door to the grocery. This also allowed their son Jim to spend time with his cousins, which included my mom. This may have also given Henry and Meta the idea and the experience to run a store themselves as they left Norris Springs in the 1940s and opened up a grocery in Eagle Grove, Iowa. This must be Uncle Bob. As I said earlier, these 5 McGowans and Tancks took many trips together. James McGowan was a widower, his wife Jessie having died in 1929. This looks like Uncle Bob climbing up onto a rock where Grandpa Tanck and Grandpa McGowan are already standing. Grandpa Tanck is the one in the center, with Uncle Bob on the right, and Grandpa McGowan is on the left. The first trip together I can find was a 1-week trip in August 1934 to Minnesota and Wisconsin, then a 10-day trip in 1935 to Minden, Nebraska to visit relatives, and then down to the Ozarks in Missouri. Next was a 2-week trip in July 1937 to Ontario, Canada. Mom remembers that among their stops was to Canada's #1 tourist destination at that time, Quintland in Colander. That was the home of the Dion quintuplets. When Mom first told me this was a tourist stop, it sounded very strange, but then looking it up in Wikipedia and thinking about reality TV shows today, maybe it's not so surprising. The 1939 trip was out west, likely that was the one to Yellowstone. The 1940 trip was 3 weeks to California. Towards the lower left corner you can see Uncle Bob waving both hands to the camera, then the camera pans down and shows Grandpa's Tanck and McGowan climbing down. They were both born in 1861, Grandpa Tanck in the Schleswig-Holstein area that is now Germany, and Grandpa McGowan in Scotland. Keep in mind they were in their late 70s. Then the camera pans back and shows Uncle Bob climbing down. He was born in 1892 on a farm between Renwick and Goldfield, so he was in his late 40s. One thing I notice about the people in these scenes that contrasts so dramatically to today is that all the men are dressed up with ties on, and the 2 grandpas have vests. I've seen a picture from a different trip that shows them starting out in the car on a hot summer day with ties, vests, and jackets, ready for an 8-hour drive with no air conditioning. After leaving Devil's Tower, the next known stop is Wind Cave National Park in southwest South Dakota. Maybe someone can place the scenes in between to know if they took the more due south route along the eastern edge of Wyoming, where they followed US 14 west to US 16 and then took US 16 east. The common point of all routes goes through Custer, South Dakota, and then takes US Highway 385 south. After Wind Cave, they continued south and crossed into Nebraska. The camera filmed both sides of the sign at the border, first showing the entering South Dakota side, then the entering Nebraska side. Carving up Mount Rushmore was mostly completed by the late 30s. South Dakota still shows Mount Rushmore on their welcome signs today. That's Grandpa Tank, but I can't tell what he's doing. Since the road back to Iowa from northern Nebraska then and now is U.S. Highway 20, I assume that is where these scenes are taken.